Hello, and welcome to the Circuit Breakers interview series. I'm your host, Steve Semler, and today I'm joined by Brian Johnson, who's the founder and president at 7-Minute Security. Brian, thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to kick us off with a brief background as to who you are and what you do?
Oh, geez. Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't want to be long-winded like my dad, so I'll try to just keep it a little bit shorter. But as it relates to technology, that'd probably be the most appropriate. I really got the bug for computers in high school, and I'm getting a little bit up there, but this was back before really internet was kind of a thing. Like the library had a slow dial-up connection that you could use, and only me and like my four friends were the only ones who ever used it. Nobody else thought it would be particularly helpful, but I got the computer bug specifically from doing dial-up games. So Doom and Doom 2. Yeah, I don't know if you've had any experience having to set a dial-up modem game up between peers or friends, but boy, did that come with headaches and troubleshooting and disconnections and lost games and slow games and that kind of thing. I don't think the kids today, you kids with your Fortnite and your instant connections and high speed internet and all that, you won't appreciate that. But it really was kind of just being a geek and being a gamer that got me into computers. But then all the problems that kind of came with installing software and running updates, and oh, Windows is broken, and there was no Google back then to go to. There was like the BBSs, the bulletin board systems you could dial into, and hopefully maybe you put a post on some board that a smart person who ran into that same error would find, and then maybe help you out and get your system running again. So I really, gaming kind of got me into computing, but I really didn't think I had the math and computer science chops to ever really do it full time. And I didn't want to be a programmer. So I kind of went to school and got into mass communications and English, and was really kind of a PR marketing guy coming out of college. And then I was working in a marketing department, and we had all Macs in a corporation full of PCs. And so the IT guys sort of, just did this, keep away from me, Macs. So if we need help, we're going to call in the Geek Squad, and the Geek Squad most people probably know from the Best Buy franchises, but pre their Best Buy integration, they were really kind of this cool, group of. I mean, yeah, they were nerds and they would wear the white shirts, with the clip-on ties, but my corporation would call in Geek Squad to exercise the demons from the Macs, and so I was sitting, when they would come in, I would sit next to them and be like, wait a minute, this is your job? You're going to troubleshoot some weird problem here. And they're like, oh, yeah, yeah. Then I'm actually going to this famous person in Minnesota's house to fix their database for their, finance spreadsheets. And then I've got to go, out of town tomorrow to work on somebody else's thing. And I'm just kind of, that's what I do. And I just thought, man, that sounds like the most fun thing. So that really planted the seed for me going, oh, I didn't realize that was a job. Programming is one thing that's still not me, but I love the idea of going to different companies, meeting people, kind of saving the day for them, hopefully. And so I started kind of a long journey beginning at help desk level, kind of working my way up to being more like a sysadmin, network admin, generalist. And then in 2013, I was really getting pressured, kind of feeling like I either had to specialize and dig in deep and be a firewall guy or a storage guy, or, kind of pick a lane, or, get into management. And I had had a little taste of that. And that just caused me, I think pre-ulcers and nausea. So I knew that wasn't for me. But a friend of mine was like, hey, I'm doing this. I'm starting an information security company. And I think I can turn an IT guy into a security guy. And I remember just feeling like, I don't understand what this whole information security thing is. Like, is it more firewalls, or like, what is it? I don't really understand. But that began a really fun and kind of drinking from the fire hose journey of, we're going to teach you everything from, you'll be social engineering and trying to talk people out of passwords on Monday. And then on Tuesday, you're going to learn penetration testing. And Wednesday, here's something called vulnerability assessments. And by Friday, you'll be writing policies and responding to incidents. It was just, bananas. And so I really felt like I was, plunged underwater in the deep seas of frightening security adventures. But from that came 7 Minute Security, which used to be the episodes are much longer now, but it was meant to be a short podcast that I would typically just record in the car on my way from client A to client B, and it was a podcast for people like me who maybe were in IT for a long time and thinking they could make the hop over to security. So I would just be like, hey, I'm on my way from this incident. I learned this is a cool tool. This helped me get, information for the authorities, what have you. Okay, bye. And, just 7 minutes kind of in and out. Um, and I kept that up. I've been doing that since I think 2013, 2014, something like that. And then about 5 years ago, had the opportunity to just kind of go out on my own, and I wanted to give a shot to being my own security consultancy with some colleagues of mine. So we just kind of kept the 7 Minute Security name, and now we do both. We still do the weekly podcast, and then our professional services focus on penetration testing and risk assessments and various flavors of training. So that was maybe way more than you wanted, Steve, but there you go.
No problem. Yeah, and now we've even got tabletop role-playing games like D&D with Roll20 coming to Discord.
Yeah.
So
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
such a long way since peer-to-peer mode of connections. Absolutely.
That funny, bringing back the old games, but into the new like platforms and apps that people are used to using. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Well, once you decided to start the business, how did that grow then? What were the kind of the initial steps in the growth path?
Yeah, well, the initial steps, it was interesting. The last full-time gig I had, I was working for an MSP that was really looking to start a security wing inside of it. But they got bought up by a bigger company, and so everybody was just kind of in the just hold fast. We're not growing anything. We just want to maintain, and we don't know if who's getting laid off. Is the security department going to be canned? Are we going to be wrapped up into the larger orgs umbrella? We just didn't know. So I went out to lunch with a friend of mine, and I was lamenting to him about like, this is so frustrating to me. Like, right now with the way things are going, we're coming to the table, and basically we're proposing the project, we're selling it, we're doing all the engineering, we're writing up the report, we're delivering the report, and basically it's sold for oodles of money, of which we get crumbs, which I understand that's just kind of how business works sometimes. But my friend said, well, so what you're saying is that you're kind of comfortable doing all the roles, in other words, being your own business. So what is stopping you from just jumping off and starting 7 Minute Security, the business? And really, Steve, my brain, I broke for a second. I think I probably cocked my head to one side and just and I was so mad. I was like, wait a minute. I didn't want you to challenge what I was telling you. I wanted you to just go, oh, poor Brian. He's got a tough life at his, cushy corporate job. But it really became something where I was like, I cannot shake this. I have to try this. So what made it like a lot easier though, Steve, was like having the podcast and using it really to kind of launched the business. It was that's really how I got our first clients. Is I just made the announcement on the podcast of like, hey, starting in a month or whenever this transition is done, I'm available for these services. And I wish I could say like I did kind of the on paper smart thing and like connected with business leaders and made a proper business plan and all the things they tell you you're supposed to do. I didn't really do that, but I did spend a lot of time kind of writing out like, if I'm gonna do my own business, like what do I want to do? And that was a great place to start because I was like, I know that I love these three things. I love doing baseline assessments. I love doing pen testing, and I love doing training. Those are three, really huge things to offer. And I knew that SMBs especially need those things so bad at a reasonable price, because a lot of security consultancies are, they're quoting things to in the heavens. I mean, dollar amounts that make my head spin. But then at the same time, I knew that really I wanted to be able to kind of say no to, well, not say no to everything else, but I knew I wanted to bring in partners to be able to do the things that I didn't want to do. And so I kind of started networking with my LinkedIn network and my other colleagues to find people who could, fill those, on a contract basis could backfill those areas. And then so that's kind of allowed us to, we always say in the podcast, like, no matter what kind of security thing you might think you need, we'd love to have that first talk with you because we've got a pretty, broad bench here of people who are really good at those specific things they love to do. But then if we're not the right fit, we think we're pretty good networkers, and we'll say, hey, go talk to this, person at this other company. But again, just announcing in the podcast that we were going to start, our own thing, that got us our first clients almost right away, which was really great. And although you didn't ask this, I always feel like I feel like blessed in a way that the podcast started and is still to this day in some ways. It's a passion project first.
Mhm.
It ended up just being something to help drive business. So many of my colleagues and their companies, they're kind of doing it the other way around, which is very typical and totally fine, right? But they're starting a podcast going, hey, really in the background here, we want to drive more business and make more sales. Nothing wrong with that. But what I love is that, I would do, even if I had to shut down my business today, I would still do the podcast because I just love, spending a week doing a test or something and go, oh, I can't wait to tell the highlights of this, on the podcast. So yeah, that's a little bit kind of how we got started and how we got our first, shingles hung, I guess maybe is a thing people say.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. And you've really been able to take that the network business concept and really execute that from everything I've seen so far. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I just feel
where
like
do
that.
people find your podcast?
What's that?
Where should people find your podcast too?
So you should be able to find it most of the big, app stores, the Google and Apple app stores, I think even on, well, yeah, Spotify for sure, and then I think a few other places. But we've kind of moved both the podcast and the businesses all at 7minsec.com. So that's the one-stop shop for everything podcast and everything professional services.
Awesome. So we'll direct people there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as business changes and the security picture changes, especially, um, what do you do to stay adaptable and open to change? I mean, how do you break the circuit of just doing the routine thing so that you can stay focused on innovation?
Oh yeah, and that's really tough right now, especially with a small team because we don't really have we're kind of wearing all the hats. And that's one thing we try to do is with so many things changing in security. A few things we're trying to stick to is a little bit more of the white glove treatment because one of my big complaints is some of these bigger consultancies, you want to engage them for some professional service they offer, and you'll get on a Zoom like this, and there'll be 14 people. You got Sally from Dallas, you got Chad from Denver, and they're all talking, and they all got ideas, and they all got to hear themselves talk. But then when it comes time when you actually want to buy that service, none of them will pick up the phone or help you. Like you don't have a face, you don't have a single throat to choke or single back to pat to get things done. So we try to really be that, hey, I'm kind of the face to the pre-sales stuff, but I'll be right there with, in all the meetings or as many as I can, right, and seeing the service all the way through to, report delivery and beyond. But so those are kind of some things we like to just stay the same because we hear over and over from clients that's a differentiator, right? I mean, there's lots of talented hackers out there. We think we're pretty good, but we're not like come to us because we're invincible ninjas. It's like we really want to have an excellent customer experience from beginning to end. But yeah, on the on the security, just as far as staying kind of abreast of all the changes there, that is something that does require. I typically block some time every Monday to just go through the different Slack and Discord groups that I'm part of, as well as the headlines, because clearly I want to stay up on what are the most interesting and kind of recent hacks, what are defenses that Microsoft and other companies are putting in place, and then as a pen tester, right, how do I understand how to go around those so that when I start a new test on Tuesday, right, things that I did last week probably aren't going to work this week. So I need to, be on top of that. But also, I think it really helps us then when we're talking with customers about, their specific project, we can also have a value add of like, well, hey, this is relevant to, in fact, I was just talking with a client today about the importance of multi-factor authentication. And they were like, oh, do places really not on their perimeter devices or external network, do they really not have multi-factor on some of their systems? And we just learned recently from the big United Health or Change Health, whatever they're calling themselves these days, from that breach, that likely the intrusion was external facing Citrix with bad creds and no MFA. So kind of as it relates back to, with so many things changing all the time in security, I take kind of a approach that was taught to me by the Black Hills Information Security Group years ago, when I first got into security, where some of their leaders were like, hey, there's always going to be new attacks and defenses and tools, and it's, these security providers that they're going to sell these services as God's gift to security. They're going to be a silver bullet to all your problems. And they encouraged, us students, like, don't get all frothy in the mouth and excited about that stuff, because you should always go back to, the basic stuff. The basic security hand washing stuff is, things like, are you patching all your stuff? Are your people picking good passwords? Are they prevented from picking weak passwords like password one or winter 2024, right? Do they have multi-factor on all their accounts? If they're not doing that stuff, I don't care about all the nifty blinky boxes they can plug into their network or all these different acronyms. The basics, like, never grow old and haven't changed in a very, very long time. So that's that's really the kind of the space and the what we think is the practical approach to security, that there's still like so much work to be done in, right? So every day in the headlines, you'll hear about some cool elite nation state hacker that did this neat thing. But meanwhile, right, we're over in the practical world of like, okay, we got into your HR director's Microsoft 365 account with winter 2024. So we've got a lot of work to do, right? Like those, everything changes, but those basics, like I said, really haven't.
Yeah, that makes sense. Many tech leaders, and you're coming from the tech side, many business tech leaders love the technology, but they also have to put up with the frustrations of the people side of the business, or just doing the business stuff itself. They're saying it takes time away from what they could be doing, spending on solutions. So how do you and in your group handle that challenge?
And I'm sorry, maybe ask that again, just because I want to give a better answer, and I
Sure.
was
Yeah.
sorry. You started asking it, and I went in a different direction.
Yeah. How do you make sure that you're handling the business side of stuff and the people side of stuff, and still being able to have the time to do the solution work?
Oh
So,
man, I'll be totally honest with you, Steve. I think it's something that is just one of my biggest struggles, because I and my colleagues were wearing kind of all the hats. So we're
yeah.
kind of, HR project managers, salespeople, and doing the engineering. So it's one of those things that I am now, I'm a little late to the game, but 5 or so years into the business, I'm finally, connecting with some smart business advisors, right, who are trying to do retroactively like a business plan and help me kind of balance my time better and more effectively. But it does end up being the kind of thing where trying to juggle too many uh, plates, and I really need to kind of give more of the engineering off to colleagues so I can run the business. But honestly, and admittedly, it's selfishly too. Like, one of the reasons I got into doing this myself is because I loved the engineering, and I loved engineering specific projects, not, some of these oddball things I would get handed, right? And I do have a fear, really, that if I get too removed, going back to your last questions about things, changing and always evolving, I have a fear of, like, if I offload too much of the engineering stuff to my colleagues, I could be on the guy in the call that's sort of out of touch. That's like the Bob from Denver. I'm like one more talking head on the phone who's going, well, yeah, why don't we do, something? And I throw out some acronym that's like not even relevant anymore, right? And then people are having that experience where it's like, yeah, they're a good group to work with, but just steer clear of Brian. Like he's so, he's so 2010 with his references to, you know, to technology. So I guess I mean the short answer is I honestly don't know that I'm doing a good balance. I think I'm always trying to figure it out and do it better.
Yeah, that makes sense. It ended up being one of the reasons that I plugged in a technical savvy to my technical leadership scorecard. So I've got a kind of a self-assessment rating that people can go out and do around technical leadership pieces. And one of an entire one of the four factors is tech savvy, and uh, helping people understand that as they go up in leadership levels in the technology space, the nature of what they need to be able to do changes a bit, and helping people kind of decide how far up do I want to up that ladder do I want to go? Because if I'm a CTO, I don't need to be the one with the hands-on and the guts of the machine or stuff, but I do absolutely need to know what this technology can and can't do and how to sell it to the business decision makers at the right level, recognizing all the other stuff that goes into that decision. So that's one of the pieces, like, tech savvy that I hope people wrestle with.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll end up having to talk to you about it because it's yeah, you hit exactly kind of where I'm at, right? Where it's almost like to go up higher and be more of a leader, yeah, I have to release my grasp on some of that stuff. It's even in discussions about like, hey, we really want to do more social media and just kind of, feed the algorithm, right? I think the kids say with more tweets and Instagram videos and that kind of thing, but and there's plenty of services that have come and pitched that, oh yeah, we'll do that for you. And then I look at some of their work and I go, they're sort of just retweeting popular security articles from bigger news groups, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just so like particular about I want I want what the services we do to be really, again, white glove and high value, but I also want our social media stuff to pump out, links and tools that are actually helpful that we've really used. I don't really want to have just some marketing company, right? Just be like, hey guys, don't forget to change it's National Password Day. It's like, okay, yeah, we all kind of do that. But again, it's like, so really I find myself going, well, I'll stay in control of that, right? But then the business people I consult with go, well, that's where you're at. You're kind of at a crossroads now. You have to give up, you know, some of these little silos in order to advance as a leader. So I think I'm just doing like a delicate circus balance right now. And yeah, just need to, kind of as we go and as we grow, I've got to figure out really long term what the priorities are and yeah, kind of go from there.
Yeah, and keeping a hobby, almost like within your business, keeping a specific hobby. Oh, this is mine. I'm gonna stay the expert in this piece can be awfully rewarding for some folks too.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. That's just it. And that's where I think feel a lot of pride on the, staying fresh and hands-on with the, with the penetration testing. But that is something that, that's a big bulk of what we do. So there's just a ton of engineering hours, right, every week where I'm doing that. And then typically I'll get to Friday and I try to block that day as the like do everything else day, but usually I just wanna I just want to get some sleep, you know what I mean? And maybe just lay on the couch for a little bit and turn my brain off. So yeah, it's a delicate dance to figure out for sure.
Yeah. Well, let me ask, kind of turning it for lessons learned. What advice or tips would you offer aspiring entrepreneurs in the tech sector who are just starting out or facing challenges in their businesses?
Oh yeah. Boy, that's you know the I did do a long time ago, kind of starting this business. I did a mini series on the podcast kind of about this. And I think some of the things I would maybe they're obvious, but they I was forewarned about these and they helped me kind of stay at it. Is one of the bits of advice was don't expect everybody to be super excited when you say you're going to quit your cushy, comfortable day job and start your own business. They said, certainly you want to have your partners, support your family support, right? But I got so many. I mean, it was almost comical. I got so many of those responses that were kind of like, "Oh, wow, that's so you're leaving, this job where you have unlimited PTO and great benefits and all that, and you're doing your own thing. Wow, I mean, that sounds really something, I mean, it's kind of like these sort of backhanded, half-hearted enthusiasm, from friends and family. But I was told to expect that, so I think I had thick skin ready for that. But I think another thing that I talk about a lot with people is that there was a temptation, and I did dip into this a little bit initially to, there's all these services out there that will be, and I'm not saying they're all bad, but for not very much money, they'll be your uh, fractional sales person, right? Like they're some, whatever it is, sales people for hire.net or something. I don't know if that exists, so don't go to that website. But they would promise that, you tell them a little bit about your company, and they'll email people and they'll call them and they'll kind of spam your name out there. And I did just a little bit of that with some emailing to some company leaders in the Twin Cities. And I mean, a few, probably 100 emails went out, and maybe, I don't know, 100 or so calls. And I got absolutely zero response from any of that. But going back to kind of something we talked about at the beginning, the networking and working your own Rolodex, that I just, after that proved not fruitful at all. Took some more like reflection on it, and I go, you know what, if we want this to be a very, personal, long-term partnership type of relationship, it looks a little not in line with that if I'm just having, if I'm just shooting out spam and hoping something will stick. So I went more the route of, let me go through LinkedIn, let me go talk to, all the people I've worked with, way in the past, right? Not respect your non-competes, that kind of thing. But companies that it's okay to contact from my past tech lives. And I just started telling them, just, hey, I'm doing my own thing. We focus on these three areas of business. Also have a podcast that you're welcome to check out. And hey, if I could ever just drop by, bring you and your team donuts or something, and just, I don't even know if people exchange cards anymore, but just if I could take you out or take you to lunch and just hear about the kinds of security challenges you're having at the company, that would be great. And that got a ton of response. That was really what kickstarted, in addition to the podcast, that's what kicked us into gear. Because, people really, and I don't think companies do this enough, where they come into a lunch or a coffee or just a conversation. I don't think they have the mindset of like, get to know these people, get to know this company, and just ask them like what they need. Don't come in going, well, we've got three main things and we're going to just pound that into their face. Just get into listen mode. And, you know, like any individual does, companies, they like to, people like to talk about themselves and their concerns, and they like to be heard, even if you don't have, and you don't have to have the exact services to match what they need. But just that whole, like, someone feels like an independent third party, is responsive and is then thinking about, well, where can I help you? You listed five things that are really making your work difficult. Well, our services meet two of those, and that's fine that we have no, skills in the other three, but it's more like, yeah, we can help with that. And we have proven experience. Oh, and again, this is where I think having a podcast or having some, a blog or something where you can give away some knowledge and stuff for free. That's been so helpful to us, to be like, we have a podcast episode that is exactly what you're talking about and talks about some free tools, and we send them that. I think that is just such a great way to, to grease the wheels. Some of uh, the business people that we partner with really discourage us from doing that. They're kind of like, hey, you got to bill for your time. Your time's valuable. They shouldn't get anything for free. I've found the exact opposite to be true. In fact, sometimes they cringe when I'm on a call and I'll say, oh, you're thinking about having a pen test, and they haven't even bought one from us yet. But I will tell them, hey, a great way to prep for your pen test. whether you work with us or not, go check out this tool and this site. That'll like harden it up and remove a bunch of the low hanging fruit so that, your pen tester is going to have to really work for their money. Again, some of the business people are like, that's awful. You should never, do that. But again, I found the opposite to be true, that you don't give away all your knowledge and all your services, right? But I guess throw them a bone maybe is the word. Like give them a little taste of the kind of value you can provide. And I mean, almost every time we end up getting that business because we're super transparent about what we do and how we do it. There's a lot of what I call secret squirrels in security that kind of hide, like, well, we're really elite and we've got, things you've never even seen or heard of. And I know that's a lie because we all use just about all the same tool sets and stuff, but it's more about the experience and, beyond the technical chops. But yeah, I think that those kind of few things have really, yeah, have really, those are kind of things I would tell people who want to get into their own business about. And then of course, the one I always mention as well is that I kind of joke that with a full-time job, you get unlimited PTO. And when you run off to start your own business, you just get unlimited TO. Okay. You get time off without the paid part. So just be aware of that, right? Maybe plan accordingly, or if you're severed from a job, have that severance going. You want to plan for that. I wouldn't say just decide one day you've had enough of your job and you're going to tell your boss to go pound sand, and then all of a sudden find yourself just coming up with a business on the fly. I'd say ease into it and transition into it if at all possible.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like you've really been able to make your marketing match your service and your philosophy. It's white glove, both on the service, but also it's the personal connection on the marketing and building the business too.
Yeah, and that's I think another reason we don't have a super strong social media presence is because really I only post when I feel like it is something, we're coming out of a pen test and this tool was so killer for us, check it out. So, I think again, if I were to find the right team or the right people, it's just kind of hard, right, to find somebody who's really into security, who also who understands security and is in marketing, because most of the hardcore techies are doing techie stuff. There's usually a separation, but yeah, that is we're trying to make it. I just really want all the whatever it is, tools, the blog entries, the podcast, the YouTube. I want I shoot for, and I know we don't always hit it, but I really want people to go like that was worth my time. I picked up some stuff that I can go back to my own company now. I can look at our network, and I know, Brian's given me 3 practical things I can check that would make it easy for us to get hacked. And oh, cool. In 20 minutes, I made my network that much more tough. That's kind of our goal, or our informal, I guess, sort of mission statement in a way.
And by connecting and serving, you're
Yeah.
able to get that across, and that allows you to ask for the business when it's the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're starting off and you don't have business, it's a hard thing to do, right? Because in the back of your mind, you might be screaming like, I really want this deal. You know what I mean? So it can be hard to get your mind in the mindset of, like you said, yeah, giving and serving, because it feels like, well, now I'm just, what if I just give it away? They just take this information and then they go hire somebody else. But I've just found that not to be the case, that people would really, leech off of your good graces and your knowledge sharing and then turn right around and just hire somebody else. And if they do, maybe that wasn't a gig you wanted to have it anyway, and that does kind of funnel back into the podcast. It's really nice, the leads we get from the podcast. We feel fortunate because they're already sort of warmed up, per se. Like they've listened to some episodes, they kind of get a feel for our style, and they come into a conversation like this and they're just like, yeah, we don't really need to check references, and we don't really need to know your qualifications. We've heard you on the podcast. You sound like you're not going to condescend to us if you come in and do a test. We like your practical approach. Let's just talk. Let's just get to the meat of it and talk about what you offer. And if the price is right, off we go. So that's been that's been real nice. And again, where I feel like we've got a leg up because the podcast started as a, knowledge share, give back to the community. And it's still that, right? But of course, at the end, it's like, hey, if you want pen testing, come to us. But I think we've kept the tone, mostly the same, even though again, the business people are like, at the beginning of the episode, talk about your website, not in the last 4 seconds, you got to feed the algorithm. And I go, I really don't care about the algorithm too much. But I guess if business ever were to really suffer, then maybe I'll adjust the podcast and, beg for business at the beginning of it or something.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Brian.
Thank
Great meeting you, learning more about your entrepreneurial journey and the recommendations and the podcast experience and kind of how to fit things into the style of your business for 7-minute security. Appreciate it greatly.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And to those watching, when you're faced with challenges in your business, consider these tips, this advice. Feel free to reach out to me for coaching and training support. As always, I'm Steve Semler at FocalPoint Business Coaching, helping techies be great leaders. Look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Thanks.